day again. My name is Teacher Casey.
Hello, and I'm Teacher Marie.
Okay, and we're going to talk about grammar time. Actually, grammar time is not in our actual book list. It is just a supplement for grammar lessons or for junior students whose parents or maybe the students themselves they ask to have grammar classes. Usually we tie it up with any book actually. There's a main book sometimes, but not with Let's Go because Let's Go is already pattern
Pattern.
a pattern book. So maybe for treasures or 10-story books, especially for students who are every day or 3 times a week, because it's gonna be maybe a slight problem if it's a twice a week
Yeah.
student if you still have to use another book. So recommend, like in my case, I would recommend for 3 times a week. One time is grammar time, and the other 2 days would be for the main book. For 5 times a week, it's up to you. Sometimes some parents they just ask for one day grammar time and the rest the main book, or twice a week grammar time and then the rest the main book.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay. So for grammar time, this is a purely actually a grammar book.
Yeah.
So there are some patterns that you learn, and then there are exercises to practice using the patterns. So for those
A
who
lot
are
of
student,
exercises.
yeah,
A
yes,
lot
a
of
lot of
exercises.
exercises for patterns, but they're cute pictures. So this is for kids. Do not use this for teenagers, like over 14 and up. Because for
Yes.
them, we could probably use side by side instead. Or there's,
Yes.
if they want to study hardcore grammar, you can have grammar news book, or maybe make your
Yes.
own PowerPoint
Mhm.
slide of grammar patterns. So going to the age range for students who are 4 to 10 years old, this is just a supplement. I remind you, do not make this their main book. But book one, if the student level is GLJ 2, then you can have book 1 as a supplement, GLJ 3, book 2, and the GLJ 4, book 3. For
Mhm.
11 to 13, I know on the site it says here GLJ 2, 3, and 4. I just moved it up a
Yes.
little bit for this age range. So book 1, we start with GLJ 1, and then 2 for
2
GLJ
and
2,
3.
and 3 for GLJ
Yes.
3. Okay, now why do
But
I?
for old students,
Yes.
I think for old students, especially junior level, who are a bit slow when it comes to improvement. Let's say the student has been studying for more than 6 months, but the grammar pattern, his sentence construction needs help. Maybe this could be like a better book
Oh,
instead of it being a
mm-mm.
supplementary book.
Instead of
Maybe
his or
yes,
her main book,
yeah, just
because
to
it's
give
not
yes,
really a very long book.
yeah,
So maybe you could insert for a period of time. You can insert
yes,
grammar time, and then when you've strengthened the foundation for sentence making or sentence construction, maybe you could go
yes,
back to your main book.
yes, the main book, yes,
Okay, but I think it would also be a good idea to consult the Korean managers first before you make this your main book.
before
As a
yes,
supplement, it's okay. I
yes.
think it's okay because you just insert the lessons with the lessons for your main book. But as a main book, I think it would be a good idea if you ask either your team leader, your supervisor, or also,
Yeah.
especially the Korean manager, because the parents might complain they couldn't probably
Yeah.
find the book if they want to buy books like Grammar Time.
Mhm.
Okay, anyway,
Mhm.
so let's move on to what grammar time looks like. Okay, I'm gonna have the overview first. So this is your title page. We're gonna discuss grammar time 2 today. So this is what it looks like. In one lesson or in one unit, there are like 5 pages probably,
5 to 6 pages. Yes.
5 to 6 pages for each unit. So here you have your be verbs and your personal pronouns. So always try to check what the unit or the lesson is about,
Yes.
and then you'll have your conversation, and then everything is listed down actually. All your pronouns and the verbs that follow, and there are some simple rules at the bottom. Okay, so this is basically what this whole unit is gonna be about. And then next one, you have a lot of exercises.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yes.
so you would not run out of exercises. And since repetition is a very good key to remembering
Yes.
something,
Yes.
I think with this one, you wouldn't really have a hard time. You don't need to have a follow-up activity, but if you
Yes.
still want to have or still want to make the class more interactive, maybe you could come up with a few of your own, like examples
Mhm.
or questions that your students can
Or
relate to.
maybe speaking or expressions like activity, because this book lacks that. It doesn't
Mm.
have like the normal topic and
Interaction.
then
Mm.
yes, not like that. So when it comes to grammar and grammar activities, no problem with that. But the teacher must add a little spice so that the class won't be boring because the student will
And the
just
student
answer
could speak.
everything.
Yes. And the student could speak more. Anyway, the next one, still exercises. So there are question making,
Mm-hmm.
there are exercises on sentence making and making exercises from making sentences rather from the picture. See, if you could see here, that's
Mm-hmm.
the whole lesson. It just goes around what the unit is about. So now let's try to talk about how we try to have class using this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe in my case, of course, it's assign one or let your student choose which part he or she wants to read, and then you read the other part.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to stretch or give more time for the student to speak or to read, you could exchange. Okay, try to correct, at least insert a little bit of speaking, try to correct this pronunciation
Yes.
and intonation, just in reading this part.
Yes. Yes.
And I know this is too long, so sometimes I don't really do this one by one because this is too long
Yeah.
and it would be boring.
Yeah. For starters, I explain what affirmative sentences are, negative sentences, because that's throughout the book.
Hmm.
Every
There are affirmative
chapter,
and
there's like
negative.
affirmative, negative form, and then question. Because at the beginning, your student must be able to know like um, textbook,
Words that are
yes,
hmm.
yes, textbook um, terms or other terms, so that next time the student will be able to identify them easily.
And actually not just in this book, with all the books that you use, I think it would be you try to check which ones like that are usually used in the book, and then you could
Yes.
make them familiar the first time. I think it would be a good idea if you start your classes or your first few classes with classroom language.
Ah, yes, that's really helpful.
So when
Really
you say
helpful.
exit the classroom, or the same thing with this book, or the terms in the book, or what the student should say when he
Yes.
wants you to repeat it, what you said, or when they want to ask a question, or
Hmm.
they want to excuse themselves. I think you
Hmm.
could start with classroom language, and then you go on to book terms, so that you won't have to repeat
Yes.
yourself each and every time.
Yes.
Okay, anyway, going back to the book, how do you do this? Because that's too many.
Yeah. Usually, and I don't let the student read this.
Do
So
not let
what?
your student
Yes.
read.
What I usually do is I study this part before I have class, and then I just teach all the patterns in the whiteboard, all the rules,
Mm.
and just simplify them. So always remember not to overload the information because the student might it's just a 25-minute class. If you teach too much, let's say or rules or too much patterns, the student might not remember all of them. So
Mm.
especially here in the question form, because there will be exercises wherein they should um, like the pattern should be in question form. So if they could identify what pronoun is and what be verbs are, maybe it's easier if you teach them like in question form, it's be verb plus pronoun. In
Yes.
question and negative form, it's pronoun, be verb plus not. And then I think the short, the what is it? Contractions will be easier after they have, after they know what.
The complete
Yes,
form.
yes, yes.
Okay, or you can do shortcuts, like
Okay.
these. Sometimes I do this, like I group them together, and then just like this, so that you remember. It's not so many. At least you have
Yes.
3 groups that you could use, and then just teach. Remember, when you have grammar, always teach the patterns. Reiterate what the
Yes,
patterns
yes.
are. So, am is are plus he, she, it plus other words,
Yes.
like that. And this, use your own words, as teacher
Yeah,
said.
instead
Do
of
not
reading it,
let your student.
right? They're not
Do
going
not.
to understand it. Yes.
And I think it would also be a good idea to explain the things here
Yes.
when you explain this part,
Yeah.
so that
it's-
you don't need to read all those grammar rules
Yeah. So it's
anymore.
very
So
important to read the
read.
material or study
Yes.
the material before, because this book is very helpful even for old tutors. They get some tips like how to explain
Yes.
this part or this part. So this is really helpful. But just add your own, make it your own. Like when you deliver the explanation, I think it's better if you have
Use your own
way.
words.
Yes.
Understand it first, get the idea, use your own words. Okay? So that is for this part. So this this page actually takes quite a long time, because this is where the explanation happens. And once you've cleared it up with your student, you check whether the student understood or already knows how to use the patterns correctly before you move on to the next page, because as I've said previously, this is basically exercise.
Yes.
So in this case, you have the short form. Sometimes you have to put the patterns here first
Yeah.
as a guide,
As a guide.
because a lot of students are very visual. So when they see something, okay. But when you just talk, that's why we always encourage the teachers to write on the board or to write on in the chat box. But I would rather that they wrote on the board so that the students could see it well. So write on the board first, and once they see a guide, then it would be easy for them to make sentences. So then you move on to exercises. Sometimes you could add your own. It would be a good thing to add 2 or 3 sentences about the student, or about students' surroundings, or about the student's
to make it
friends
interesting.
and family. Yes. Okay. So all exercises, don't just let your students read. I think a good way of guiding the student is, especially for younger ones, to make them choose. So like, they, is or they are. So it's, you guide them you try to give them answers to choose from, but you do not give them the actual answers.
Like him.
Okay?
Like that.
Or like, he is or he are. Which one is correct?
Yes.
Just like that. Do not give them give them the answers. Still, exercises.
Exercises.
And actually, that's the end of it. This is another dialogue. So I think by the time you reach this page, they are already familiar with which words to use, or they already know how to use the terms properly. So then I think this will just be very fast. Okay, sometimes, since quirky, this is quirky. If you don't use grammar time, I will introduce you to quirky. Quirky is actually very funny. Sometimes we have a conversation, so we don't have a lot of speaking time with grammar time, because it's mostly a lecture book. Grammar pattern or grammar books are usually lecture type classes, so try to come up with your own. The way I have conversation time with my student is we talk about quirky. Or sometimes I ask them, like, look at the picture. Oh, why does he have hearts? Like, what do you think is happening? So let the student make sentences and correct your student's sentences. Sometimes you could put all those corrected sentences together, and then they have their own story from the comic strip. There are only 4 pictures, so it won't be that long.
Yes. And they can change the names of their friends or their playmates.
Teacher's name.
Sisters,
Yes.
Yeah.
So since we are speaking tutors, always try to remember to give to whatever book you're using, try to insert a little bit of chance for the student to have conversation.
Yes.
So the good thing is Corky is very funny. So sometimes, like, look at Corky, and then what happened to him? Did that happen to you before?
Oh, yeah.
What happened?
Or
Let
do
them
you like
tell a
birds?
story.
Yeah, maybe. That could be
Use your
a start, yes.
imagination again and try to make use of what you see on the board and the student's
Okay.
experience. And then the last one, still exercises. So if you could see, grammar time is just quite fast.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because there's one focus and exercise, exercise, exercise.
Yes.
So if you've explained something clearly and the student gets it, exercises are just going to be fast. So I suggest, if for example you make this your main book after the approval, of course, of the Korean manager, you
Yeah.
can use conversation starters.
Oh, yes.
Conversation
But
starter
it
first,
depends.
and
It
then this one,
depends on the
student level.
level, yeah. Because sometimes it's just one page or two exercises
Hmm.
for one student. So
After
it
you've
depends
gauged
on,
your student, and then the student can get it
yeah.
easily. You think the student can get it easily, and you couldn't find any other thing to help you stretch the class, maybe you could use conversation starter. Okay? But anyway,
Okay.
to wrap up, grammar time is used as a supplement, okay, not as the main book, unless, well, they're old students and you really wanna reinforce their sentence structure making, and you always have to ask the Korean managers first. This is a lecture. When you present your lesson, teach them the pattern.
Pattern first.
Okay? Do not make them read the rules, understand the rules, explain them in the simplest way you can, or in a way that your student could relate to. Give examples that the student could relate to, and then you can do the exercises. You could add exercises that the student could relate to again, and then try to think of a way to have conversation time, even if it is a lecture class. I think that's all I have to say for grammar time.
Yeah.
Anything you need to add?
And nothing. Nothing.
Okay, so I think that's all for grammar time, but this is grammar time 2. Grammar time 1 is a little bit easier, of course, and grammar time 3 is a little bit more challenging.
Yeah.
The difficulty changes with the level of the book, but
Level.
just try to know the book, and then know when you should recommend it, only when you think that the student really needs a lot of help, or not really a lot, but yes, a lot of
To
help on
improve, yes,
structure.
and or focus on
Okay, this is
structure.
not a conversation book.
Yes.
Okay? I think that's all for the grammar time. Thank you again. And
Grammar time.
yes, it's bye-bye time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.